What's going on, everyone? Jim Alexander here with Real Talker at the premiere of National Geographic's The Hot Zone. We are talking Ebola and infectious diseases, all the scary stuff with the cast and all those involved in the show. So stay tuned for my interviews coming up next. Nick, first of all, I noticed you have incredible shoes. These are super fashionable. So
these are my boots that I got in Houston that are made out of some sort of fish out of the Amazon River. It's not even leather. I don't know what it's the skin of some prehistoric fish.
This is kind of fitting for an occasion in that case. Tell me what drew you to this project. I mean, this is something we've kind of, maybe what was it, like 5-6 years ago? This was a big thing going on in this country, in a sense, and it's fresh still in a lot of ways. What drew you to that made you immediately kind of say, this is what I want to be part of?
You know, for me, it was just such an interesting character that the guy that I play is you know, kind of a simple guy who works at the rest and monkey facility, and that's where the disease breaks out, and he's kind of caught up in the, you know, do I have it? Have I spread it to my wife? And you know, are they going to have to destroy all the monkeys? And that's not the kind of character I usually play. I'm usually the government guy coming in saying, kill these monkeys. You know,
was it refreshing then for you to play something that?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had a great time with this show, and a great bunch of people. Just the cast is incredible, and Juliana Margulies, I did most of my scenes with her, and you know, we just had a ball. It's just a lot of fun.
What did you learn about, in a sense, Ebola, infectious diseases while working on this film? Because I'm guessing there's a lot of research and facts coming through as you're doing this. Anything particularly that stood out about all of this?
You know, I think one thing I learned is that, like, bleach is like some sort of magic fluid. You know, it's like, yeah, it's like if you just throw bleach all over everything, you're going to be safe. You know,
and also dangerous too if it's killing everything, right?
Yeah, but that was I didn't know that it was so important. You know, but like they just sterilize everything with bleach. So that was one interesting fact, and also just how quickly and how easily, you know, diseases like this can be transmitted. I mean, that's pretty scary stuff, and this show does a great job of that, of bringing that fear and that danger home.
You know, what is one thing? I mean, maybe multiple things working on this film, either on set, off set, that stood with you that you maybe will take further in your career? Is there anything that stands out, either working with actors you work with or directors or just the production in general that really kind of hit home to you?
No, it's just another job. I don't know.
Hey, that's keeping it real.
I can't think of anything. I always like working with great actors and great material, and that's really what anybody looks for. And this was just really good, well written, great stuff with great people in it, and it was an honor to be part of it. You know, so I hope to do more things that it's an honor to be a part of. I've done a lot of crap too. But.
Hey, at least you're doing things. That counts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you only did good stuff, you'd starve to death. You know?
Exactly. Anything else you're working on currently that you want to share about, or?
I did a movie in the Dominican Republic that's a Spanish language movie that I'm the only English speaker in that will come out later this year. It's called Hotel Capilia, and it's written and directed by this young man, Jose Maria Cabral. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And I'm trying to direct and produce some things. You know.
Doing it all, man. Good for you. Looking sharp and everything. Enjoy the show. Thank you so much, Nick. Appreciate it. Well, I'm the last one, I'm guessing, right?
All right.
Robert, you have the perfect name for Hollywood. I'm telling you, man. It draws me in right away. What attracted you to this project? I mean, besides kind of the real life thing that we went over like 6 years ago or so when we had this scare in a sense, but what drew you in personally to it that made you want to do this?
Well, I'll be honest, Juliana. She's brilliant, and I've always admired her work. The story was an important one to tell. It was an honor to be asked to be part of it, and that it was helmed by National Geographic is huge, because it's not like they're marketing it as an apocalyptic, lights out kind of movie, but they take these things seriously because their day mission is about making people aware. So this is an extension, but it's also just a beautifully done feature film. So there were a lot of pieces going into it.
You get the best of both worlds, kind of educational and
Exactly, and a great movie.
What did you learn about infectious disease, Ebola, working on this project? Because I'm sure you're learning some things that you never came across. But what is something that stood out to you that caught you off guard in a sense?
That we were talking about Ebola, but there are probably another 300-400 infectious diseases, catastrophic diseases, that every day could threaten our existence.
Scary as well.
Exactly. I mean, if you go on a bus and you sit in a certain seat, you can contract it that easily. And we take all of that for granted. Now, you don't want to be paranoid, you don't want to live in a shell.
Right.
But live in a shell.
Where's that bubble wrap?
Exactly.
Put it over.
Where's that bubble wrap? Exactly.
I love it. In that sense, I mean, it's crazy how we're exposed to so many things, but yet as a society with our scientists and stuff that we keep it under guard.
Yeah.
Being part of this movie and this project, these sort of things made you aware, in a sense, appreciate the people we don't see, the behind-the-scenes work that goes on all the time that we're unaware of, but that guard us, or that are that bubble wrap for us.
That's really a great point. We have so many institutions where the heroes are at work day and night, and we don't even know the institutions exist.
Right.
But they show up for work every day. They take their badges, they press in. They're totally anonymous, but in fact, they're motivated by humanity. They're motivated by their love in science and protecting humanity. So they're the watchers of the wall.
Definitely. And finally, any favorite memory working on this film, on set, off set, that kind of stood with you? Anything funny maybe? Or
I just remember, mainly I remember it was an amazing cast. And we would sit in some of the big scenes together and just tell great stories. And that's what I love about this whole thing is just working with a lot of people you don't get to see a lot, but we come together and we tell great stories. Then we go out there and nail it,
Simple, memorable.
Simple, memorable. Thank you
so much.
Thanks
Really appreciate it. Well, you are the man that's kind of put this all together in a sense. I'm curious, when you research this, because there's so much research that must go into making a book and telling a story, but that's also a horror in a sense because of the subject matter. How do you make it entertaining and educational at the same time?
I listen to people very carefully, and I go over their stories again and again. Just to give you an example. So I spent hour after hour doing focus interviews with Colonel Nancy Jacks. And one day I was sitting at her kitchen table, and I said, now this is a little weird, but the hands of a person are a window into character. Would you mind if I spent about 15 minutes examining your hands and taking notes and asking you some questions? She was like a little weirded out.
I'm sure they never got that before.
Yeah, no reporter ever did this before.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be valuable, and I had my notes out, and I was like a palmist, examining her hand, and I found out that she had a scar on her knuckle. And I said, what's this from? And she said, well, that was a goat that bit me on the farm in Kansas when I was 10 years old. And all of a sudden I thought, now that's a little element of her character. She's Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. She's the girl from Kansas who wound up in the army in a spacesuit. And she's in her kind of Oz, as it were.
That's fascinating. Ebola and infectious diseases infectious diseases, we don't know about so many of them that go on. What are certain things that stood out to you or startled you in a lot of ways researching this and learning about it? Anything that really, in a sense, stands out to you before you started putting it all together in your research process?
Well, I think one thing that really struck me as I was researching this is the hunger or the appetite of the Ebola virus for human flesh, for human cells. This is a virus that, you catch a cold and you get infected sinuses. Ebola virus attacks absolutely every tissue in the body except for bones and large muscles. It basically causes a kind of biological meltdown. This virus, this little microscopic thing, is voracious for human bodies. I find that fascinating, not just terrifying, but absolutely fascinating. I mean, it's an example of the power of nature. And we sometimes kid ourselves as, the dominant species on the planet that we can somehow dominate or control nature. But nature has tricks up its sleeve that we've never even dreamed of.
When we had this kind of epidemic 6-7 years ago, when we start hearing about Ebola, even though it's been around much longer, the cases have been studied happening before. How do we, as a society, kind of educate ourselves in a sense and prepare for such a thing? Because, it's scary to think about that, how rapidly infectious diseases can carry across the globe. What are you, from your kind of opinion and research, what is the best way for kind of us to brace and prepare for something like that, and also not live in fear at the same time?
Right. Well, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And there actually are a lot of things we can do to prepare. And it's basically very simple stuff. It's like give a little bit more money to the CDC so that they can have free funds to deal with something new when it comes along. All the money's tied up in government programs, but if there was just a fund there where they could, basically an emergency response team that could go deal with the next weird virus that emerges. That's number one. Number two, good old shoe leather surveillance. Just public health doctors going out there into rainforest regions all around the world and just tracking on diseases. And every now and then, some weird disease will come out of nowhere, and if there's somebody on the ground who notices it, it could make a very big difference in stopping it before it gets into millions of people.
That is well said. And finally, should we live in comfort due to all the scientists kind of are everyday fighting these things and researching it? Would you say to a casual normal person we are safe in a way, or there's always a worry that we should be worried about epidemic potentially happening?
Well, there are a lot of things to worry about. You could worry about getting hit by a bus.
It's true.
You could worry about a meteorite striking the Earth. It's about probabilities. Unfortunately, the probability of a really nasty virus emerging and erupting is very high. We can't predict when or what it will do or how bad it will be, but we know that it's going to happen. And that's why a little bit of prevention, just sort of common sense stuff. And then the other thing that is actually happening right now that I'm happy to tell you about is that the government is actually developing techniques for making drugs very quickly that might be specially targeted against a new virus. And certain kinds of these drugs are now being stockpiled at secret locations in the United States. There is a drug now, I'm told, that might be effective against many different forms of Ebola. Now, I don't know how much of this drug they've made, but there might be enough of it on hand to protect medical workers. You think about that. If you can protect the medical workers, and there's a massive outbreak of Ebola or something like it, if you can keep the hospital people safe, then they can go into the wards and they can take care of patients without dying themselves. See, what happens is with these bad viruses, they always kill the doctors first. And once they wipe out the doctors, the rest of us, we're toast.
I guess I'll get some bubble wrap in the meantime. Thank you so much for sharing.
All right.
Appreciate it. Hey, I'm learning so much about infectious diseases and I'm sorry. Oh, man. Thank you. Is it more terrifying to you being around all this, or you feel more calmer now after experiences the stats, the facts working on this show? What do you feel?
I wash my hands a lot more than I used to, and I'm much more cognizant of the vulnerability that we all share to disease. It's important to take care of yourself. It's important to be healthy. It's important to vaccinate. It's important to work together as one peoples, because we are one species of humanity. In the eyes of a virus, we're all the same. The virus doesn't know color, doesn't know religion, doesn't know nationality. The sooner we can realize that that's who we are, that's what connects us, the better off we'll be as a species.
In a lot of ways, I think of this as a real-life horror movie with a killer you can't see in so many ways. How, in a sense, do you make it real, even acting in a film where, 6-7 years ago we were kind of exposed throughout the nation and world about Ebola and stuff. How did that struck you, and is there a sense of reality that you just take from the inside by experiences and hearing about and being almost at this point that we were?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I get the question.
I guess the question would be, how does the real life experience of living kind of through the fear of it, I guess the potential alarm of it, made you a better actor in this movie and a character in this movie through experiencing that?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know. It certainly made the fear accessible and tangible. Yeah.
Any favorite memories working with the cast, on set, off set, that you kind of take with you going forward?
Yeah, a lot of great memories. We had a great time making this. None of them are suitable for work, though.
Oh, okay. That's probably the best stuff. Thank you so much. I'm doing a double interview shot, right?
Yes.
Perfect. And who would this be?
You know, believe it or not, this guy doesn't have a name. He just arrived as sort of a good luck charm, and it's not even really, this wasn't even made for the show. This was just bought on Amazon and given to me. So, unfortunately, I think the suit, it has leaked.
Well, don't expose him to anything.
He was well enough to come tonight, but you know, he's been a very good companion on the process.
You know, when I think about composing and a show like this is kind of a horror, in a real life horror potentially.
Very well said.
Would you put the elements of horror kind of sounds and music into a show like this, even though it's based on truth, but the reality of it is genuinely horrifying?
You know, we always kept coming back to what you're talking about, which is that at the heart of it, this is an organic story. This isn't like an alien or an invasion. This is an invasion, you know, a threat to the human race, but it's a real thing. And so when we were thinking of, well, what will the sound of this, what is the sound of the story? You have the sound of the characters, which are amazing characters. It's a great story. But the sound of the virus, you think to yourself, well, how does that go? So anyway, I've asked a lot of people here tonight. I ask you, like, when you're thinking of I was thinking of something unsettling, because when you watch it, there's a little bit of recoil occasionally. There's a naturalness, and I think, well, what are unpleasant things that we hear? Yeah, I was just thinking, you know, how we might go, and I was thinking broken glass,
simple things,
and organic. So in the end, there's this. I took a piano and sort of detuned it. You know, so this, like, between a white and a black note, there's all these tones, and I thought, well, if I start with fooling around with those kinds of textures and introduce them really like minimally, like just little thematic motifs, but then as the virus spreads, the detuning would sort of spread. It would sort of evolve a little bit more outward and be a little bit more chaotic. Maybe that you wouldn't consciously notice, but the idea is that it would sort of disseminate and spread in a little way, because I wanted to get that notion of spreading, but you can't see it.
Right.
So
it's kind of, you can visualize it in your head somehow, possibly, but the sound of it, what is it?
And you got to get out of the way of it, because I think the imagination does a lot of the work. I mean, when you're watching the show, did you see the opening of this thing?
I did not.
Okay. Well, when you do, I mean, the opening 6 minutes, there's a couple of moments you're like, ooh. I mean, like, your mind is doing all kinds of tricks. So you're like, I've flown on airplanes, you know, and there's some things you're going to be thinking, but that was the challenge of it. But I had really good producers and really good storytellers, and we worked very hard on the sound of the show, and it evolves really nicely. And I think the story concludes really beautifully as well. Even though we have an ongoing situation, I mean, this is a real world thing it's not resolved. So
we faced this like 6-7 years ago, I think, when the big news kind of broke around the world with some of this Ebola stuff going on. How do you make music for stuff that you know people can genuinely relate to with real life fear? These are real life moments that hearing about it, you're seeing the newscasts about it, that brings genuine fear. Yeah. How do you kind of use that to turn it into the sound?
It's an excellent question. I think I would say to you that because there's so much natural realness to what you just described, that musically you don't really have to goose it. You know, you don't want to exploit it. I'd like to think that everything that you feel in the show when you watch it arrives sort of naturally. The other show I work on is Homeland, and Homeland is another real-world kind of show where you rely a lot on the sound of the real world, and then when the music comes in, it's not pandering or it's not telling you how to feel. You want to just sort of arrive at this sort of natural place of discomfort, and it's true. There are a lot of really scary things that are going on, and you can kind of get lost in the fear of it. But at the same time, there's hope in this, because people are really fighting, and they're really this is something we're struggling to get in front of.
It's heroic too, and a lot of the scientists and stuff, they're heroes, right? So you need to make the music sound also hopeful, right?
Absolutely, you know, and the relationships between Nancy and Jerry and the other scientists who have their own story, their own journey, doing this. There was sacrifice, and it took a toll. It took a toll on these people. So you're playing that part of it too. Everyone has a very unique journey in this, and I hope people think that the whole thing musically, honors all of those journeys in its own way.
I can imagine there's a lot of work, Sean, because you got to go through ebbs and flows of human emotions, real people, and then the real horror that happens. So I'm excited to see this.
And it's horror because it's real. That it's more horror because it's like, God, that's like here.
And that's what connects with the audience, because if you can visualize it and feel it, I think the music only adds and enhances, and it kind of expands upon your imagination.
Yes, I cannot tell you how many times he put his hands over his eyes. No, you got it though. You got it. Yeah, I mean, I hope you like it.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Sean. Both of you. Enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
You've kind of been through the real stuff here when it comes to this topic. What is something that we should know as a public regards to infectious diseases, Ebola, things like that? Is it something we should be more scared of, or more calm in a sense and relieved knowing that there's people working on this?
Well, it'd be naive to think we don't have anything to worry about. That's for sure. And I wouldn't be crazy about anything. But the real answer is that none of these things are easy. When you have a disease, once you identify it and once you come up with a countermeasure at the other end, even if it's a brand new infectious disease, maybe 15 years. Well, if you have a disease outbreak, 15 years is not going to do anybody any good. That's happening, when it's happening. So. I think it's very, very important that when people watch a film like this or read a book like Preston's book, that they understand that we need to invest in, in ways to protect ourselves. That's the number one thing that I think has come out of the whole hot zone, the hot zone issue. So that's the important thing. Is that we need to keep the pressure on to try to help protect ourselves, because you can't do it in a day or a week, and it takes years, and it takes developing scientists, and it takes expensive facilities that people go, hey, we got potholes we need to fix. We don't need to spend we don't spend $1 billion on that lab. So it's very complicated, and it's tough, but we have to do it.
Fair assumption this would be your wife?
That is my wife.
What is it like living with someone who's been through kind of the real life things? Is it educational, knowing, hearing from him? Is there something that you can hold out to that this man has taught you?
Well, I kind of taught him too, I think.
Oh, okay, that's even better.
I mean, that was my job, and so yeah.
Truth be known, she dragged me along the whole way.
Well, one more thing, I guess. What can we do as kind of individuals every day to I guess, in a way, prevent ourselves and protect ourselves from getting infectious diseases, and anything we can do, any steps we can take?
Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands.
My mom was right then.
Yes, she was.
And I think having some basic awareness of what the risk is, and things like this help to make that happen. But someone who is fat, dumb, and happy and just thinks somebody's going to save them, it's probably not the best way to go.
Sound advice forever.